Hello, and thank you very much for inviting me to be here. I'm embarrassed that I'm attending a conference on agrobiodiversity, and I join you today with pathetically little knowledge about it. But what I do understand, and what I hope we'll be able to talk about a little bit, is the context in which agrobiodiversity needs to thrive. And so today's talk is something that takes that right on. So let's begin. We're now in the world where the Food and Agriculture Organization of the United Nations has this wonderful 10 elements of agroecology for us to be able to draw on. The problem here is, well, first of all, it looks like this. And if you're trying to engage with an audience of policymakers, they'll see this diagram and run a mile. And that's unfortunate because, yes, agroecology is complicated. Yes, it's much more than just farming with biodiversity added. But it's important to understand that agroecology is an intervention in a range of spaces. We understand that agroecology is a science, it's a set of practices, and it is a movement. And when you explain agroecology this way, people may scratch their heads and say, well, why can't it just be one of those things? Why isn't agroecology just what we do when we get together and come to an agrobiodiversity conference? And the reason that we need to take the step back and we need to contextualize is because the context in which agroecology can become a movement that can allow us to live on this planet in a way that everyone eats well. In order for that to happen, we need to recognize the constraints under which we operate. And so that's what I want to talk to you about today. And to do that, I want to really sort of zoom in on the current configurations of power, the matrix in which the ideas of agroecology need to be presented. We need to think about the arenas in which we're fighting for a world in which there is more agrobiodiversity. So to do that, I just wanted to use an image that some of my colleagues in the International Panel of Experts on Sustainable Food Systems put together in 2016. Now, this is the 8 lock-ins of the current food system. You'll see right at the center is the concentration of corporate power. Thinking about power in the food system, one doesn't merely need to observe that it's a long story. A century ago, there were 4 major grain trading operations: Archer Daniels Midland, Bunge, Cargill, and Louis Dreyfus. And they're still around today. But what's worrying is that increasingly we're seeing the rise of concentrated corporate power and the rise of concentrated political power to back it up.
Hello, my name is Steve Arquette. I'm a policy modeler with the Millennium Institute. First, I want to thank the Secretariat of the Second International Agrobiodiversity Congress for the opportunity to share some of our research with you. Also, I would like to introduce the co-authors, Derek Chan and Emil Zaharia Kezdi of the Millennium Institute, and John Ulloa and Charlotte Pavago of BioVision Zurich. The research is about balancing organic food production with food self-sufficiency through agroecology, a sustainable approach to farming closely aligned to agrobiodiversity. Our research question is, Can agriculture in Bhutan be made 100% organic while also improving food self-sufficiency? A bit of background. The royal government of Bhutan has a goal to become the first entirely organic nation in agricultural production. However, Bhutan also wants to improve food self-sufficiency, particularly in with the fee-bait plus training. As you can see, the patterns are similar. However, the simulation with fee-bait shows a faster transition to agroecology. And at year 2040, agroecology is almost 100% of the total rice area. Rice self-sufficiency improves in both scenarios. However, not to the 60% target set by the Bhutanese government. On the right are sensitivity simulations to assess the robustness of the policies to uncertain production cost parameters. The pink color indicates where 95% of 250 simulations fall when these parameters are randomly varied. A comparison of the confidence intervals shows that the fee-bait plus training policy is the more robust policy. Research contributions to the Congress, we propose that the fee-bait approach warrants consideration as a policy to move agriculture toward agroecology or agrobiodiversity. Another contribution is the model itself. With a little modification, the model could be set up to investigate policies for agricultural change in other countries or states. More generally, we hope we have demonstrated the value of systems modeling and simulation for designing and testing policies for agricultural change. Thank you. I look forward to our discussions.
Hi, my name is Andrea Sanchez. I'm from Paraguay, and I'm a research assistant at the Alliance of Biodiversity International and the IAC. Today, I'm going to present the preliminary results we got from a global meta-analysis about the financial profitability of diversified farming systems. So it's widely acknowledged that conventional farming systems, meaning highly simplified farms with high external inputs requirements, are a major environmental threat, and that alternative farming approaches are needed. So there are dozens of scientific papers providing empirical evidence that shows diversified farming systems can mitigate the negative environmental impacts of conventional farming. So what is preventing farmers to make the transition from conventional to more diversified production systems? Well, part of the reason may be that diversified systems are less profitable, creating a barrier to change. Yet we found that there is a clear gap in the evidence of economic aspects of diversified farming systems, and therefore a lack of clarity on how costly or profitable these systems are compared to conventional farms. So to fill these gaps, we are conducting a global meta-analysis to see what is the financial profitability of diversified systems comparing to more simplified farming systems, and to explore how these responses vary across different variables. Well, our preliminary results are based on a database that includes more than 1,500 effect sizes from studies that compare the financial profitability of diversified and simplified farming systems in 31 countries around the world. And among our most interesting results, we found that on average, diversified farming systems presented significantly higher gross and net returns benefits than simplified farming systems. But these diversified systems were also more costly, probably because farmers need to invest in more supplies or type of management. We also found that diversified farming systems like crop rotation, intercropping, and combined practices like integrated crop livestock systems presented significantly higher net and gross incomes. But the implementation of combined practices presented also significantly higher related costs. Moreover, when we found that diversified farming systems that mix cereals like maize, wheat, and rice with other non-cereal crops like pulses, vegetables, or oils gave the highest net income benefit. But the total cost of implementing these systems were also higher. And when we look at the distribution of this data, we notice that the results for the different cereals with no cereals combination were based nearly always on studies analyzing combination of annual crops and studies analyzing crop rotation or intercropping. So our provisional results demonstrate that profits were actually higher in diversified systems than conventional ones. However, the financial cost of transitioning from simplified to more diversified farming systems are high. So farmers need policy and financial support to implement diversified farming systems. And this is particularly important in developing countries where, according to our database, diversified farming systems presented significantly higher net and gross returns, but also higher total costs, which is likely to be a barrier for many low-income or smallholders farmers. And finally, financial outcomes for other diversified practices like agroforestry are difficult to define considering the data bias toward crop rotations and intercropping gaps in the study. So more field experiments are needed to document financial returns and costs of other diversified practices in poorly represented cropping systems and regions. Thank you very much.
Hello, greetings to all. My name is Camila Fritzing Sidon, and I'm a researcher with a master's degree in environmental quality. I'm from Rio Grande do Sul, Brazil, and today we present my research named Agroecology Strategies to Promote Conservation Insights from Brazilian Small Farmers. I'm the main author, and other authors are Paola Schmidt Figueiró and Duchamp Schreiber. Our research question is, how small farmers implement conservation agricultural practices in Brazil? The purpose is to elucidate this lack of knowledge. And for this, interviews were conducted with two specialists from a government institution of technological support for Brazilian agricultural extension. The objectives were to characterize the agroecological aspects developed by small Brazilian agriculture preparedness and to highlight the main strengths, weaknesses, and challenges to promote the conservation of the agrobiodiversity. Our outcomes. So, through this research, we evidenced that Brazilian small farmers are implementing these key aspects to develop the conservation of the agrobiodiversity. They are the green manure, the biomass generation, seeds bank, cooperativism, the biofertilization, food safety, the woman empowerment, the biological control, the agroforestry, culture diversification, organic compounds, reutilization, and green manure. Our research contributions to the Congress are that agroecological practices contribute to increase the environmental quality beyond the farms, to enhance presence of species, including animals endangered,
my name is Viviana Ceccarelli, and I'm a research fellow at the Alliance Biodiversity International CIAT for the Lima office in Peru. In this presentation, I will present our study about climate change tolerant genotypes to promote the adaptation of cacao cultivation to climate change in Peru. So we know that cacao cultivation is expected to be impacted by climate change, and tolerant genotypes are the most promising adaptation option to climate change. On the other hand, we also know that Peru has a wide genetic diversity of cacao, as this country occurs within the center of origin of this species. Therefore, in this study, we aim to identify climate change tolerant genotypes in Peru to support adaptation of cacao cultivation to climate change. More specifically, the study had three objectives. First, to assess the future impact of climate change on cacao in Peru. Second, to identify areas where climate change tolerant genotypes are present. And third, to develop an online tool to help cacao farmers to select propagation material for climate change adaptation on their farms. And overall, Peru. As you can see from the figure, from the modeling results, we found that cultivated cacao will experience a net contraction of its suitable area in future, while wild cacao will mostly remain suitable and actually further expand under climate change. Therefore, it is clear that cacao cultivation is vulnerable to climate change in Peru, while partial adaptation could come from cacao wild populations. Then the second objective of the study was to identify areas where climate change tolerant genotypes are present. To this aim, we identified within the distribution of cultivated and wild cacao areas where cacao population currently live under the most extreme climatic condition, such as highest potential evapotranspiration or lowest precipitation of driest quarter. This population may be already tolerant to climate change. So we performed some collection mission to collect propagation materials from this cacao population. And we are currently testing the collected genotypes into climate chamber experiments. Next step will be to identify the most tolerant genotypes and introduce them in farmer fields or in the longer term into breeding programs. Finally, the third objective was to develop an online tool to help farmers to select propagation material. So we developed this tool called cacaodiversity.org. The tool is currently available online, and in the tool it's possible to select the coordinates of a farm, and the tool will return an automatic report with information about how climate change will impact cacao cultivation in the farm in the future, and also will provide a list of nurseries where to source propagation materials tolerant to climate change for the farm. Now, I would like to conclude this presentation with a few
world, and South America was one of the main territories in which it took hold. This figure shows that from 1961 to 2019, the area dedicated to territory cash crops such as bananas, soybeans, and corn has always been higher than the area dedicated to more than 110 food crops. But the gap increased since 1961, where there were 39 million hectares more destined to cash crops in front of 2019, where this difference reached 83 million hectares. In the same year, more than 60% of the area was dedicated to cash crops, which represented less than 25% of the total crops and varieties. An increase in the area dedicated to cash crops is evident, but although at a slower phase, the area dedicated to food crops has also increased. In this context, this study asks what are the characteristics that make some farms have more agrobiodiversity than others, and to identify these characteristics to suggest public policy that favors the increase of agrobiodiversity on Ecuadorian farms. The objectives are to study the factors that increase the level of agrobiodiversity in Ecuadorian farms, to analyze the difference by natural region in the agrobiodiversity on farms, to determine gender differences in farm agrobiodiversity levels. For this purpose, a multiple regression model was estimated with information from 2020 continuous survey of agricultural surface and production. The dependent variable was the Margalef index, which is an agrobiodiversity index, which is calculated by the logarithm of the quotient between the number of crops and the land area. The independent variables were grouped into three categories: farmer characteristics, access to services, and spatial information. The results show that farms managed by men have 21% less agrobiodiversity than farms managed by women. Likewise, the indigenous ethnic group has higher levels of agrobiodiversity than the other existing ethnic groups. Similarly, those who report no education have higher levels of agrobiodiversity compared to those who have completely primary, secondary, or higher education.
Hi guys, my name is Chef Mandri from the Chef's Manifesto, and today we're gonna make something delicious using sorghum. So as you can see, sorghum is basically one of the neglected ingredients, but yet very nutritious, enriched with vitamin B, and it's basically just amazing. It is available in the country or all over, like I would say all over the world, and it is just delicious. I'm gonna make a delicious recipe using the sorghum. So first things first, what you want to do when you have sorghum is it's a dry ingredient. So what you want to do, you want to fill it into a pot or pour it into a pot and then add some water and then boil it. So if you have a normal pot, it's all good, but if you have a pressure cooker like this one, it's just fantastic. You want to boil it for at least 45 minutes until you get something like that. So let me tell you, when this is basically what you have, you are sorted. All you want to do is basically just toss it up and make something delicious. So you can actually fry a little bit some onions and make it a hot kind of meal, but then today we're just going to make a nice cold salad using this sorghum. And what am I going to use for the salad is basically sorghum that I cooked into a pressure cooker for at least an hour, and it's nice and soft. But then how do you make it fun? So this is basically like a quarter kg of sorghum that is boiled. The beauty of sorghum is that it puffs up really well and it becomes like, you know, quite a big quantity. It's just 250 grams, but then once boiled, it absorbs all the water and just becomes nice, and look at that, amazing. So what do we want to do? We just want to flavor it a little bit. So definitely go in with some salt, and then you're gonna go in with a little bit of some black pepper, and then you're gonna go in with a little bit of some onion powder, because I'm not gonna use any fresh onions. And then we're gonna go in with the juice of almost half a lemon into the mix to get that lovely tangy kind of feel into the mix. And then I'm gonna go in with olive oil, a big olive oil, and then give it a toss. Just gonna mix everything together so that the flavors are gonna become nice and intact. So this is a very simple salad that you can make at home. To make it a little bit fun, let's go in with some diced tomatoes. You can use sun-dried tomatoes just to get that extra punch. You can basically use just this the way it is. You can add in some carrots into the mix, grated carrots, and then you will be sold. This is basically just for the color, and look at that, look at that. You know what? Let's start making our delicious salad or plate it. Okay, this already tastes really good. Now, what I'm gonna do, I'm gonna take that and I'm gonna pour it into my casserole. You can use a tray, a casserole, or wherever you like.
everybody. It's a pleasure to be here at this second Agrobiodiversity Congress. And I would like to share some thoughts about global genetic security, which is a term that perhaps you have been familiar with in the past. It's the way we look at the global insurance that
Hi everyone, my name is Stefan Schmitz. I'm the Executive Director of the Global Crop Diversity Trust. It may be hard to believe now, but the potato was once an unknown crop in Europe. People were reluctant to eat them. With time, it became a staple and a food security crop. Gnocchis in Italy, pierogies in Poland, the shepherd's pie in the UK, tortilla española in Spain. These are only a few well-known European dishes that are based on potatoes. And of course, French fries and chips. We eat it in all sorts of ways. But the varieties we consume for all the colors and sizes we see in the supermarket are, in the end, very limited. Some indigenous communities in the Andes grow between 200 and 400 varieties in their family plots. And they know how best to grow and each eat one of them. Some taste better boiled, other mashed or fried. They know which ones peel easily, by hand even, and which ones last longer in their pantry or storage room. This is where potatoes come from. And in Peru, the International Potato Center Gene Bank safeguards and makes available for all of humanity some 4,500 varieties of potatoes. Some are tasty, some are not, but all of them are important to us. Why? Because they hold this wealth of traits that breeders and farmers can use to improve the common varieties we eat. This diversity makes them more nutritious, makes them resistant to plagues and diseases, just as well as to frost, helps the domesticated varieties survive drought and heat. We cannot expect farmers to grow 4,500 varieties of potatoes, of course. More so knowing some are simply unfit for human consumption. That is why we have gene banks. And our job at the Crop Trust is to help gene banks, international, regional, national, big and small, maintain and make available the diversity of the foods we eat. It doesn't matter where we live, we all consume the staples. Wheat, rice, beans, maize, to mention the most obvious. But there are countless others, cereals, vegetables and fruits that are not only vital for a region, but are also tasty and good for us, all of us. Gene banks protect the diversity of those as well. We at the Crop Trust are working with partners all over the world to make this diversity easier to use. Let me give you two examples. Finger millet can survive in soils with low levels of nutrients and has a short growing season.
You've likely heard the success story of quinoa, the Incan crop that in one decade went from traditional grain to global superfood. However, the quinoa you find in grocery stores only represents the tip of the iceberg. For generations, farmers in the Americas cultivated over 3,000 quinoa varieties that have unique tastes, nutritional profiles, and climate adaptation potential. Unfortunately, much of this biodiversity is now disappearing as farmers only grow a small handful of crops for the global market. For traditional crops to survive in the future, we need conservation to benefit farming communities. Researchers have developed a new approach that offers indigenous farmers tangible benefits for growing and conserving biodiversity. We call this Payments for Agrobiodiversity Conservation Services, or PACS.
We're very excited to have pioneered the implementation of PACS. Farmers at our project sites are being rewarded for growing threatened crop species and varieties with high public good value.
First, communities are offered landscape-wide competitive tenders. Farmer groups define conditions, including which priority species and varieties to cultivate from a crop portfolio, the kind and level of reward they need, and which farmers participate. Efficiency and social equity criteria inform the selection of communities with the most attractive bids.
Them are in great danger because of human interference and possible climate change. Earlier analysis on prioritization of Indian crop yield relatives was made way back in 1984, and it needs a relook. Our research questions are, how many meaningful crop yield relatives occur in India? In many times, people collect less important species, leaving the needy ones behind. In some cases, like commercial crops like rice, wheat, barley, the search has gone beyond the genus boundary. So meaningful value is important. And other research questions will be how many of them are considered exit and to what extent, and what are the issues and constraints related to these activities. Therefore, the objectives are prioritization of Indian wild relatives of food and agricultural important crops based on some pragmatic criteria. Pragmatic values, I want to give emphasis since we are talking in practical sense, not on literature or theoretical based information. Analyzing the gaps between the available CWR in nature and how much extra they are considered in various gene banks such as seed gene bank, cryo gene bank, in vitro field gene bank. This gap analysis will help in rationally formulating our future exploration plans besides updating our knowledge on crop wild relatives. Based on overall closeness of the wild taxa with crop and their potential use in crop improvement program, 861 taxa
Thank you very much for the invitation to participate at this important event. It's a real honor for me. I will present an overview of the evolution of the policy framework regarding agrobiodiversity, and I try to draw some conclusions and also to note some of the shortcomings and gaps. The premise for my talk is that biodiversity, including plants, animals,
everyone, my name is Yi Wen. I'm a plant-forward chef educator based in Shanghai, China. I'm delighted to be invited by the Chefs Manifesto, global community of eco-conscious chefs working towards Sustainable Development Goals, especially focused on Sustainable Development Goal 2, to share an agro-biodiverse dish that's regional and seasonal. I'm actually at a wonderful permaculture farm called Heartland, based in Toming Island, which is only 1.5 hours drive from Shanghai. What I'm going to be using is a wonderful spaghetti squash, which has been steamed. After scraping, it becomes a low-calorie pasta substitute. It's indigenous to Toming Island, harvested in around May, June, and actually has to sunbathe for about 1.5 months, and then it has been kept in the cellar. Instead of the usual pad thais, we're replacing the refined flour with fiber-rich, antioxidant-rich, and also full of vitamins and minerals of spaghetti squash. Using some red cabbage, some zucchini, some bell peppers, red and yellow, and also some lemon later. Shiitake mushrooms. I've toasted some peanuts, chili sauce, ginger, raw cane sugar syrup, homemade Worcester sauce, some white pepper that I've grounded. And another indigenous ingredient in China is kudzu, which is a very strengthening root vegetable that has been dried and made into a powder, which we're going to use as a thickener in place of cornstarch. Kudzu is actually a whole food plant, and we actually use that in Chinese traditional medicine to strengthen our gut. Brown rice vinegar and a little bit soy sauce. It's made from 5 different types of grains. Garlic and also some rapeseed oil. Kombu shiitake broth that I have soaked for about 4 hours, so this becomes the broth. This is pea sprouts and is also one of the Future 50 foods. I really love the lotus because every part of it is edible. We can eat the actual seeds, and then after the flower is dried, it can become an ornament. Yunnan province of China, where they use different plants and flowers to create this beautiful colors of rice. Worcester sauce. Okay. And then we're going to add a little bit of the sweetener, the natural sweetener. Okay, we're going to add a little bit salt. Add some ginger and some white pepper, which I've grounded. Dilute it with a little bit water. To give it a little more Thai flavor. So now I'm mixing everything. Yeah, once the sauce is heated, the kudzu will start to thicken. Not too much oil. Put some garlic. First of all, we need to let vegetables express their natural flavors, but just with a little touch of different type of sauces can actually enhance the flavors and bring it to another level. Actually, a lot of B complex too. So since we can't really travel these days, we can travel through cooking. Add a little lemon juice at the end to make it a little more Thai style. Now we're ready to plate back to our spaghetti squash shell. Roasted peanuts. Spaghetti squash pad thai. This is with the lotus flower. It's so important to inspire more, to widen our taste and flavors, as well as using biodiverse ingredients so we can build a resilient food system. Wishing the Agro Biodiverse Conference big success this year. Thank you.
So I'm gonna make a pie pie using this succulent sea pumpkin, and I'm also gonna make a salad to go with it. So I love the leaves, they're very nice and succulent, so you can see, and they've got like a nice soury taste, so you can see that they'll work very well in a slaw. So let's get on with it. So first up, I'm gonna make the filling for the pie. So I'm using spring onion, which I'm gonna chop. I'm gonna use the sea pumpkin, which is the main ingredient today, and I'm also gonna use some nice feta cheese. So the idea is to try and incorporate the sea pumpkin into my normal everyday dish, and I love plant-based ingredients and I love indigenous ingredients, and this one is my absolute favorite right now because I'm just playing around with it, trying to find interesting things to do with it, and also just to incorporate it on the daily in my in my food, and so I can also just eat it more. So first up, I'm just gonna chop or slice these onions, these green onions, like just roughly slice them. So I'm just gonna roughly chop these, as you can see, and we're just gonna fry them together with the sea pumpkin, which I'm also gonna roughly chop, and I'll show you now. So the onions on the side, and then my sea pumpkin. What I like to do with the sea pumpkin is just to remove the leaves like that, and then I'll just chop up the stem for my salad. So I'll use the leaves for the filling, and then I'll use the stems for the salad. So I literally use up everything. So just gonna also just slice this, and I'm gonna cook these together, these two together. I'm just gonna fry them lightly, saute them in some garlic oil. My sea pumpkin has been cooked and sauteed. It's now, I'm just gonna let it cool, and I'm gonna add some feta cheese to it. Just crumble some feta cheese there, some nice chunks of feta cheese. I like the feta cheese because it's nice and salty, so it's gonna add a nice saltiness which pairs nicely with the sea pumpkin. So I'm just gonna mix that in. That's gonna be the filling for my pie. Oh, it smells amazing. It smells really, 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 really incredible. So now that it's mixed in with the feta cheese, I'm just gonna put it aside and then roll out my pastry. I'm just rolling out my pastry, and this is gonna be a free-form pie. So it's gonna be like a galette. It's gonna be a free-form pie, and I'm just gonna roll it out literally as natural as possible. Nothing fancy, just something simple that you can do at home also. Then I'm gonna spread my sea pumpkin over there. Nice, it smells incredible. So now I'm just gonna bring that in. And you can just play around with the top. Just simple and easy. We've put the pie on top of the baking tray, and I'm just gonna add a bit more feta just to bring in that saltiness. And now our pie is ready to go into the oven, and into the oven is gonna go in for 180 degrees for 15 to 20 minutes. Now that the pie is in the oven, I'm going to make a salad to go with it. So it's going to be a nice salad using the stalks from the sea pumpkin, using some red cabbage, lemon, fresh herbs, some pickled ginger, just to add a little spiciness to it. So here's my pickled ginger, the stalks, the cabbage, some fresh mint, lemon, salt, and a little bit of olive oil. That's what's gonna go into my salad, which is a nice slaw, which is raw, crunchy, and we're using the whole plant. So we'll be using the whole plant, including the stalks of the sea pumpkin. So I'm just gonna roughly chop the stems. So you want them to be nice and thin, so they're crunchy, and you know your slaw has that nice crunch. And if you've got any seasonal fruit, you can add the seasonal fruit to the slaw. I like the sea pumpkin. I love the flavor of it. So I'm not gonna add any fruit in there, but it's gonna work very well with the red cabbage, and it's gonna look amazing. So I'm just gonna put it away. And then we're gonna do the cabbage. Add the pickled ginger, which I've just also roughly chopped, finely chopped, because it can be a bit strong, so you don't want it to overpower the salad. And then we're just gonna squeeze some lemon juice over it. Now this is gonna marinate while the pie cooks in the oven. Just gonna leave this to marinate for a little bit. And it's just so fresh. The sea pumpkin stalks are so delicious. Just gonna squeeze the lemon, a whole lemon in there. You want the flavors to come out. You want the cabbage to be slightly pickled. Some salt, a little bit of oil, olive oil on top. Now we're just gonna roughly chop up the mint. And just add that. And that's it. We're done, and the salad is ready, which is looking absolutely beautiful. And so is the pie. The pie is ready. Look at that. That is amazing. That looks absolutely incredible. So I can't wait. This is going to be my lunch today. So I can't wait to literally go and have myself a pie and some salad. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope you've found something delicious to make. I'm very excited to eat this. It's my first time eating sea pumpkin, but it smells incredible and it tasted amazing when I tasted it.
Hi, I'm Daniel Kaplan from Bogota, Colombia, and today I'm going to be making a traditional fish stew soup from the Amazon region from Colombia. I'm going to be using pirarucu, which is a fish that comes from the Amazon River. What we're going to do is we're going to saute it, and then we're going to add a few ingredients. Here we have a little tucupi. Tucupi comes from the cassava or the wild yuca. We have farofa, and we have farina, which is also from the yuca. A lot of the ingredients we're going to have today are made out of the yuca. And this is tapioca, which we've rehydrated in a little bit of a stock that we made with some onions, with some wild onions. And we're going to decorate with the cassava. So here we have a hot oil. Make sure it's nice and hot. We're going to season our fish on both sides. Salt and pepper. This pepper comes from the Putumayo, which is it's also grown by the indigenous people in that region, also very near the Amazon, actually part of the Amazon. Okay. Once our oil is very hot, you can use any kind of oil. Here we're using vegetable oil. I'm going to put our fish down. I left one with the skin, one without the skin, so we can get a little bit of a crispy skin, and that's for a little bit of decoration. So we'll cook it on the skin side down first. And then a little bit more salt. What's really nice about this tucupi is that it also works it's a great flavoring ingredient. If you don't do it right, they don't do the extraction right, it can actually be toxic. So it's got a lot of umami, so it's going to give us a really, really nice flavor. And this fish, this stew or soup, however you really want to call it, is they eat it for breakfast because it gives you a lot of energy in the morning. You can let it still. I'm using a Teflon pan, which makes it a little bit easier, so whoever wants to do it at home as well. And flip the first piece. That's nice and brown. You gotta get a little bit more color. I like to add a little bit more salt once we flip it. Now we have achieved a nice crispy skin. It's going to cook for another about maybe 2 or 3 minutes. We're going to add a little bit of our tucupi now, and we're going to save a little bit for later. It's going to give it a really nice flavor. A little bit more. And we're going to add some scallions as well, also to give it a little bit of color and a little bit of more flavor as well. And add a little bit of now we're actually ready to plate our fish. You put the skin without the skin on the bottom, with the skin on the top. And put our onions, which have caramelized a little bit thanks to the tucupi. We're going to finish it. This is farina, which is that after the cassava has been taken out, it's been dried. A little bit more. This is farofa, which is the same farina but toasted. We're going to add more tucupi around the plate. With a very nice flavor. And we will finish our dish with 2 different ingredients. This is the tapioca, which we rehydrated. This will give it a nice texture, a nice flavor. And this cassava will just break up a little bit. And we'll put it around the dish. Put it on the side as well. And with some more farofa and farina.
It's such a privilege to be here sharing with you all today at the 2021 Agrobiodiversity Congress. Today, we're going to be discussing agrobiodiversity, but it wouldn't be complete without bringing expert scientists to the table together with chefs who sit between the food that's produced and the food that we eat. So that being said, it's my absolute pleasure today to have 3 chefs joining me who are representing Indigenous foods from their native homelands. And I've also got a real honor to have my friend, Dr. Shakuntala, who will explore with me some of these foods that these chefs have brought from aquatic foods from Colombia, China, and South Africa. And food's been such an integral component of the rise of different civilizations. And it's a common language that we all speak. It brings out emotion, it brings out memories, it's connected to our cultural heritage, and it's also can be absolutely delicious. And so diverse aquatic foods have long been a part of many cultures, and yet often they're forgotten.